Greetings. This is General CJG here, coming to you with, well, the finale of the Darth Bane trilogy. Yeah, after 2 months of doing this, well, yeah, we finally are ready to finish it once and for all. So, yep. And I got with me here.
This is the Spider-Pen Maniac. We are finally at the end game.
And
So, Captain Henson, I'll be happy to be done with this.
Yep. So, without further ado, let's end this. So, first, very quick introduction, or should I say, what are our first experiences with this book? So, who wants to go first on that?
I'll go. So, I read this book at the same time I read the rest of the trilogy. Don't remember exact time frame, but you can go to the Captain Henson YouTube channel to see when I did my reviews. And, yeah, honestly, I do not remember what I initially thought of the book. You can watch my review of it to find out, but when I went to reread it for this video, something caught my attention. I remembered nothing besides the ending. Specifically the last few pages of the ending. Like, it was almost like reading the book for the first time. So, if that doesn't speak to what I think of this book, I don't know what does.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, Doan?
The first time I read this book was trying to read the EU in the chronological order. And I think I don't remember, but I think I enjoyed reading the book. I think it was a suitable end for Bane's ending. That was before I had more knowledge regarding the EU, but that's a story we're gonna have to talk about today, right? Yeah, that's that.
Okay. Well, as in my case, well, I read this right after finishing Rule of Two. So, because I was indeed curious of finally finishing the trilogy, and I read back then, and I did really enjoy it a lot. It was an awesome read and everything. So, yeah, that was pretty awesome. And now in my since that time, this actually been my. That was like my first time reading it. Reading it for this podcast is actually my second time. So it had been a long time since I read it. I did still remember a fair good chunk of it. There were a few things that I forgot. So there is that. And rereading a second time, yeah, I definitely enjoyed it more than the other two, but that's mostly because there was many less continuity issues to deal with compared to the other two books, which the other two books were another story in terms of that shit. So definitely better in that regard. So I can at least give it credit on that. The book does have a few other issues, but yeah, I think at least it's better than the other three. So I guess there is that for me. So yeah. So without further ado, so now, since we already mentioned our first time, so we shall get into this book. Now, there's no specific part 1 or part 2 or any like that, like in Path of Destruction or even with Rule of Two with the two halves, the time skip. So in here, we're gonna go with 3 parts. I guess the 3 acts that happen in this book. So we're gonna first begin with the first third of the book, which basically deals with Bane and Sana pretty much on their path to eventually going to their designated missions or places, which in the case of Bane is to going to Prakith in search for Darth Vendetto's holocron, and Sana going to Dawn to pretty much investigate some situation regarding a Jedi having been killed in that under some assassination attempt. So yeah, so that's basically what we're discussing. So okay, so in regards to part 1, okay, so basically Dynasty of Evil takes place 10 years after Rule of Two. Bane and Sana are living in Citric 4 under the identities of Sep and Alia Omek, some wealthy merchant siblings. So yeah, they are basically they're hiding. They are still like training and doing their operations to pretty much have the Sith Order ready for when they take over the world. However, Bane is like he notices that he's slowly getting weaker by each day, even if he no longer has his Orbalisk armor. So yeah, and he also gets worried that Sana has not tried to challenge him for the title, the mantle of the Dark Lord of the Sith, which Bane doesn't seem to find that too reassuring. So he basically then devises some sort of plan, which involves a certain Sith Lord he hears about, in particular Darth Bane Dynasty, and so he tasks one of his suppliers that gets him dark side stuff to pretty much just get some stuff about Darth Bane Dynasty. He gets it and realizes that basically he survived for many years. So that gives Bane the idea of pretty much going to the resting place of Bane Dynasty, which is Prakith. So he's preparing for that journey. Meanwhile, well, Bane is preparing to send Sana to Dawn to pretty much investigate a certain assassination attempt that happened in there regarding some mercenaries that had basically been killed by an unknown assailant. And the mercenaries were in the presence of a Jedi that they were discussing some sort of terms regarding how to pretty much go peacefully between the mercenaries and the royal family of Dawn. But unfortunately, an unknown assailant pretty much kills off the mercenaries and the Jedi, and that pretty much gets chaos all around. So yeah, that's pretty much what happens, and Sana's going to investigate that. So there is that indeed. So that's a basic summary of the first act. So yeah, so what do you guys got to say on that?
Now, last time, while doing Rook 2, I incorrectly said that appearance and the demise of Barabit was the last remnants of the comic known as Jedi vs. Sith. I have to say I was incorrect, because Khalif's daughter, Khalif, the healer from Ambria, and his daughter returns in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And we still haven't finished with Jedi vs. Sith, at least for yet.
Yeah, so, and I'm in the same boat. I completely forgot Caleb's daughter was in this book. And of course, we get her name as Sarah here. Yeah, like I said, like reading the book for the first time. And one of the things that really struck me when going through this is how little I was caring about, like, anything. Because, okay, we had the previous two books needing to focus so much time on the Battle of Ruusan before, during, and after. Because, God forbid, in this Darth Bane story, we focus on Darth Bane. We gotta focus on the entire galaxy around him, which I get it. When you don't have much to work with in regards to the Battle of Ruusan, you gotta do a lot of heavy lifting, but I think it came to the detriment of this trilogy. So, in this final book, that's the culmination of Bane's entire journey. Why are we still putting so much effort into telling all this other shit? And I get it. Sarah is important on a thematic level, but she did not need to be here. None of the Dawn stuff needed to be here.
No, I think Drew Carpenter took it's a poetry, it rhymes, in the most literal sense, because Sarah returns, and he's gonna return to somewhere else. In fact, I'm starting to wonder why Groshik didn't return in this book, and Bane didn't randomly meet him on the streets. Like, yes, you remember me? Groshik! I was kind of expecting this kind of scene.
I don't know if I brought this up in Rule of Two, but at the very least, the problem is, again, here, Bane and Zana are separated for most of this trilogy. Now, it makes sense in the first book because, well, they don't meet until after the thought bomb goes off, so you can't really do much in that book. But in Rule of Two, in this one, they are separated. I mean, I don't know the ratio between time together, between time apart, but like this, they are the foundation for the next for the next 1,000 years worth of Sith. You know, the Sith we see in the fucking movies. And yet we don't get enough of their relationship, in my opinion. I mean, okay, we get enough to understand what it's like, but we don't spend too much time with them together. And in the final book of this trilogy, that's meant to end with them fighting, why separate them again? Or at the very least, if we had spent more time with them together, them separating would have, like, wouldn't be an issue in my opinion. But this is the same shit that happened in the previous book. We already played this fucking game.
Wouldn't some people say that the reason why it's separating the last book is because Bane having the Orbalisk armor and Sana having to do all the errands and shit? I mean, that is kind of what the book said that was the reason for.
But did the story have to go that way, though?
The first one, they kind of needed... Okay, I could excuse it in part 1 of the first book, why they had to be separated, because if you read, Bane of the Sith, it clearly states that Bane was looking for his apprentice when he arrived in Onderon or something. So,
well, of course, that's keeping in mind that Carpenshin clearly doesn't care about continuity.
Yeah.
With the Bane stuff.
For some weird reason, he went on an elaborate explanation to explain why they're separated. So that was something, I guess. But by separating, my problem is not really the same as Henson on why they're separated. My problem for them being separated is it gives another unnecessary perspective. So what we have observed in Drew Carpenshin's books is like you have multiple characters. For this book, for example, you have the perspective of Sarah, and then you have perspective of Darth Bane, and then you have Zana, and then you have the Huntress somewhere, and then you have Seth Hart. So like you jump from one character to another, and then another, like focus on a specific character. Do not separate them into millions of pieces. It's busy.
I mean, tons of other Star Wars stories, or I should say stories in general, jump between different characters. But I think the real issue here is, and I've said it before, it's taking time away from the titular character and where it's meant to all lead. Now, I mean, yeah, at the end, all these various stories come together, but why did it have to be told this way?
Yeah, it's not like in other Star Wars stories, like the main movies, where there's actually like multiple characters you can focus or some other stuff. Where, yeah, obviously with them, you can actually focus more on the characters. Whereas here, the trilogy is called Darth Bane Trilogy, which, we should be following Darth Bane, because, it's his trilogy. But only in the first book do we spend a damn good amount of time with him. Second book is like half of it, and the third book is like, what?
By then, you can make the argument he's not even the main character in this.
I mean, he is a main character, but he is not the main character, which is a problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
An example of a Sith Lord being together while having multiple perspectives. Darth Plagueis is a good example. You have sufficient amount of pages where Darth Plagueis and Palpatine are together, and it focuses on Plagueis and Palpatine specifically, so it doesn't jump around a million characters, so we understand both characters enough while having enough information for the character Darth Plagueis. But in this book, the main character Darth Bane is not the primary focus.
Yeah, it's honestly astounding. I think Plagueis as a novel is this concept, but done exceedingly better.
You can thank James Lucino for that.
Well, I mean, yeah, Lucino was like a god we should all worship. But
I agree with that.
Like, and on top of the writing quality, and I think in terms of just like writing, Lucino is better than Carpenshin, but like, look at Plagueis as a novel. That focused on the actual Sith stuff. like, I felt like I was, like, really learning something with that. And again, because it wasn't jumping between a million other plots, we could just focus on that. But because in this trilogy we have to focus on all this other shit, it takes the focus away from the Sith stuff. We get plenty of Sith stuff, but I feel like everything we learned regarding the Sith, the dark side, is like hyper fixated on certain points. I don't feel like we're getting like a broad spectrum of shit here.
And I think the reason why Darth Plagueis also works is specifically special for it because Palpatine himself is a politician, which helps to naturally merge the political and world-building aspects with the Sith story, which this book series kind of fails to do.
Yeah.
Also, in the Plagueis novel, I never got annoyed with Plagueis and Palpatine spouting their dark side philosophy. By the time we get to this book, I am so fucking sick and tired of hearing Bane talk. Just the way maybe it's just his belief structure, but I just can't stand him by this point. He is so fucking annoying.
Yeah, I think it's the same. The weak deserves to be ruled over the strong. Okay, I get it. That's how you live under a Patros, but do you have any other things to say?
Right, like that's his whole fucking philosophy, and that's all he spouts, both verbally and in his thoughts. It's like this is the fucking guy who like reset the Sith Order.
Reset the Sith Order according to Drew Carpation.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Because if you actually consider how the Brotherhood of Darkness was portrayed in media prior to Path of Destruction, that were actually kind of Sith worthy, other than the clownish depiction in Path of Destruction.
Yeah, they were portrayed as fucking incompetent. It makes you wonder how the hell they gained any kind of power. But yeah, it's just Bane was annoying. Sarah also got annoying. Granted, I could understand where she was coming from, but still, you know, we're told that she lived this whole life, that she met this guy, fell in love. Oh, they were the happy family, but then, oh no, due to the political shit that was happening on the planet, he died. And then she went into this deep depression, but it's like, why should I care? I don't know who her husband is, and from what I can tell, based on what we're told about the planet, I'm with the fucking miners. Fuck the nobility.
It's kind of weird that a girl who herself was threatened by Darth Bane himself, because she was weak and powerless, is like actively trying to oppress the planet with the workers. Okay, I know you married to the nobility, but like something's weird because this nobility is actively trying to, you know, oppress the miners in the planet. So why am I supposed to, you know, sympathize with Sarah? Like, sure, the prince dying is sad and all, but like the miners were also killed and slaughtered and abused, right? So why am I supposed to empathize with Sarah and the king and the whatever kingdom this is?
Yeah, it's like, what am I supposed to feel here? Like, yeah, and I'm not saying we should have seen her entire life story. It's not necessary, but to put so much focus, so much time on this quote-unquote tragedy, when, like, really, I have no reason to sympathize with her. Like, yeah, sure, losing a loved one sucks, but it's like, when a group of people are being abused by those with power, I hold no fucking sympathy. But I know the whole point of her character is she'd lost her way and all that. But again, it does make for a very, very exhausting read. Not as much as hearing Bane continuously spout about how the weak deserve to die. Did you hear me? Do I need to repeat it? Still, again, we didn't need this story. Like, thematically speaking, what's done with her is interesting, but it's like, we didn't need her here. But hey, we needed to have the final character of Jedi vs. Sith finally die, except Zana.
And I think the Jedi who was sent in the minors to solve the conflict, I think the Jedi, Syrian Jedi, I think he was described in this book as like bored out of his mind. Because like, I know your main purpose is trying to collect the Sith artifacts, but dude, there are people literally being abused by the higher classes in the planet. You are a freaking Jedi. Like,
Oh, but that's the thing about Jedi. They're just meant to keep order and peace. That doesn't mean it has to be good for all.
yeah, I know, but the Jedi in this book actively feels like he's bored out of his mind and doesn't really want to care about it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I can totally buy there being Jedi like that.
Yeah, I can do it too. At least in the prequel era and Old Republic side, because we have seen
Like-
it before.
he constantly describes his book like, okay, I understand what you're going with, but can I get to the artifacts? Like, no, dude, you gotta solve this problem where, like, God.
I mean, it is one of those things where I actually like that because, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there would be a ton of Jedi who just would not give a shit and just view it as not their problem. Especially when something as important as Sith artifacts are involved.
Yeah, there is that too, indeed.
So, this might be a minor thing, but they finally refer Khan and his brotherhood as the new Sith.
Mm.
If you watch the previous podcast, you would know that I constantly reference the new Sith. By this point, I guess you two understand what the new Sith is.
Yeah.
For those in the audience, enlighten them.
The new Sith is basically started with Darth Ruin. Now, the old Sith and the new Sith is kind of different, despite. So, there's like a phase of the old Sith, the new Sith, and the Rook too. The old Sith will be the likes of Marka Ragnos, Ajunta Paul, Exar Kun, Ula Keldroma, and the new Sith will be the likes of Khan, Githany, Cordis, Bane at the time, and Rook too. They finally refer the war as the New Sith Wars, which it took Drew Carpenter long enough to refer what they are.
Mm.
Now, when was the term New Sith first coined?
You see, the New Sith term was actually something that came out in like the early 2000s, and I think it came out because if you read the Phantom Menace novel, it says like a Jedi. There was a one Jedi who created the Sith Order after he left the Order, but the problem is because previous EU material stated all these Sith Lords, right? Exar Kun, Marka Ragnos, Ludo Crash, and all this stuff. So it kind of created a problem. What do you mean this one Jedi came out and created a Sith? Like, what are these other Sith we've seen in the previous EU material? That's why the new Sith was created. To differentiate, the quote-unquote Jedi will later be known as Darth Ruin, and the likes of Khan and Bane.
And there you have it, folks. And this is why, when it comes to EU material, it's a whole world for you to explore.
Yeah,
All of that based on one or two fucking words. Or three.
The new Sith. Yeah.
New Sith Order.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's that. I actually, to be honest, I didn't even notice that.
I didn't either.
it was kind of weird that he didn't refer to any of them. Oh, no, as the new Sith. Oh, Belia Darzu was also a part of the new Sith.
Well,
But that's that.
there's that, yeah. So, yeah.
You know, once again, we reach a really interesting. Wait. Oh, wait, yeah, okay. Yeah. So, once again, in one of these Darth Bane books, we really only focus on one or two past Siths. In this case, just one. Unless we had an indirect reference somewhere. Dendu.
I think
And
Belia Darzu was mentioned as the holocron thingy.
But yeah, in terms of like the important Sith mentioned, the Dendu, It was, again, like, going back to the Plagueis novel, what that book did great was just, like, I mean, yeah, name-dropping all these various Sith throughout the franchise's history was, like, amazing on a fan service level, but the book also discussed why mentioning all these Sith was important, and it's like, yeah, all these Sith, all the shit they've done, is important for what the current Sith are, what their philosophy is, and the accomplishments of all these Sith. But in the Bane trilogy, for a guy who's like creating a new Sith Order from the ground up, basically, we never really get to see him like actively explore a ton of past Sith Lords. We get like a handful, but within those handful, not many of them, or at least a few of them, aren't delved into it all. Like, I'll go back to Exar Kun. Like, nothing is referenced in regards to Exar Kun in that first book, just his name being dropped. And it's like, yeah, it's cool to get a Dendu here, but it's like, there is so much that could have been explored here that just isn't.
And so you wanna know what's the worst thing? Exar Kun is not even referenced. So in the first book, you have Exar Kun vaguely referenced as one of the past Sith Lords, and in the second book, he was relegated to a Dark Jedi, and in the third book, he's not even referenced at all.
So yeah, there's also that. But yeah, like, I mean, also on the plus side, just like in the previous book, Revan isn't even referenced, so that's a good thing. But then, wasted opportunity. Like, here we have a chance to see, like, how does someone create a fucking Sith Order from the ground up, based on thousands of years worth of knowledge garnered by previous Sith. But we don't fucking do that because we have to deal with the Battle of Ruusan, and then we have to deal with the after effects of Ruusan, and then we're just, oh, yeah, now Bane and Zana are fighting.
You know what would have been a good way to have the book, even if it's just pure name drops, the previous Sith, it could have easily said in the beginning when Bane is like just going around in his mansion, his suit trick, just pretty much doing his exercises, and then he goes into the library, and there he's like checking all of his stuff and trying to find the scrolls and everything. The book could have just simply said there's records on Exar Kun, on like Kaldroma.
Well, I mean, here's the no. This isn't something you can really fix just in like one scene. This is something like you have to spread out throughout the trilogy.
I know. I'm just saying it could have at least had something, but it's not even that. Like, we don't even get that.
And that's the problem, because we keep praising the book Dark Plagueis, right, while we were reading the Bane trilogy, and that just tells you how much one single book could have done this job better than this. So
it's as I said, Plagueis as a novel is this concept but done well.
So let's consider this fact. So when referencing the past Sith Lords, when Plagueis looks at Darth Maul's lightsaber, he says, oh, this is like how Exar Kun once did. He also referenced Revan and Malak. Like, you think their power, Malak's power was like reduced when he got his jaw chopped off by Revan? So it's not just a reference for the sake of reference. It has a proper context for why it is being referenced. There's also Bishiet, the Sith Emperor from SWTOR mentioned, as an example of how he managed to live for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Sith from KOTOR 2 are name dropped, for God's sake.
Yep.
And nobody cares about them.
At least most of them.
Well, when I say nobody cares about them, I mean like in a franchise sense, where they just like don't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, basically. Straight up, like not really wanting to even bother referencing them.
Like, I mean, like, look at Nihilus, for example. Like, you can make the argument that he is indirectly referenced in, what was it, Path of Destruction?
Rule of 2.
Rule of 2. But it's like, is there any reason we couldn't just get a name drop there?
Not really.
Well, at least KOTOR isn't referenced at all in this book.
I'm fucking thankful for that.
It doesn't matter if it's KOTOR 1 or KOTOR 2. or the
Though honestly, KOTOR 2 would have been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, but that never happens when it comes to Drew Karpyshyn.
We've been complaining, but I have one thing to praise in this book. There is a main original character. Well, not original, because this character did appear in Path of Destruction. Is the character Lucia or Lucia, whatever how you call her.
Yeah, I completely forgot this character existed. Then again, she played such a minuscule role in the first book.
And the book does say that she was the one who killed Lieutenant Ulabor. Remember how Lieutenant Ulabor would get a unfortunate accident? So there's that.
Oh yeah, that actually was pretty cool to read.
Of course, I mean, she didn't need to be here, but
Well,
cool, I guess.
Well, you see, according to what I said, people from Darth Bane's past returning, all that stuff.
There's that indeed, yeah. Indeed, so.
I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, I guess it's cool to see how these people from his past react to what he's become. But I don't know, like, at this point, we already know how Hugh's gonna react. And we obviously know they're gonna be shocked at what he's become. So it's like, we don't need to see this. We already know the outcome, and I don't think it's interesting enough to really have it here.
Yeah.
I am glad that it eventually bites her in the ass, though, but we'll be getting to that later.
Yeah. Shall we get on to now the part 2 of the book, guys?
Yeah, summarize part 2.
Okay, so let's get into part 2. So basically, in here, so after Bane and Sana leave to their designated missions, so, okay, Bane goes to Prakif for Darth Vendetto's holocron. So yeah, he does the trip, he arrives to the temple, meets hostile resistance, annihilates the shit out of anybody that gets in his way. He manages to grab the holocron and he escapes to then have a long trajectory back into Sutric 4 because Prakif is in the deep core, so you know what that means. Not really stable and safe space traveling. So yeah. And while his journey, he opens the holocron and he's trying to make the transferences process. But the gatekeeper, which is basically Darth Vendetto in hologram inside his holocron, says, "You're not ready. I will say when you're ready." And Bane's like, screw this. I'm just gonna think over the holocron and I'm gonna literally get the info. He manages to get it. And so, despite that process not being one of the easiest or safest, he manages to do it and survive. So, he managed to get the info he wanted. So, yep, the secret of transfer essence is his. So, yep, that goes. And yeah, meanwhile, when that happens, Sana goes to Dawn to investigate what happened to the Jedi and the mercenaries that were killed. So turns out she finds somebody turns out that she finds the dark Jedi that is searching for amulets too, and his name is Set Harf, and he's a dark Jedi. Came into Dawn to search for the Sith amulets that the Jedi, the one that died, came here searching for. He managed to get him. He gets away with them. Sana shortly later on tries to also basically arrives at Dawn. Sees that the only info she gets from the cantina owner, which is a freaking Rhodian, says, the Sith artifacts, yeah, they're already taken by this guy. And then Sana goes to find more info how to get to the guy. She manages to get it, so she goes to find him in Al Khatta. And, well, she confronts him in his mansion, and the Sith and the Dark Jedi fight. Sana gets the upper edge, forces Set Harf to pretty much become her apprentice, or at least make him inclined to be her apprentice. And so, yeah, that goes. And now they're going back to Sutric 4. Meanwhile, when that happens, Sarah, Kalev's daughter, visits Coruscant to negotiate some sort of a deal of sorts. So basically, told the Jedi, "There's nothing to worry about. We don't need to do any investigations. We can deal with this ourselves and everything." But while that shit was happening, turns out the Jedi decided to show the tomb of the Jedi that died at the end of Rule of Two, and in those names, her father was there, and she basically broke down and asked Lucia to pretty much ask the assassin that killed the previous mercenaries in the Jedi. Yeah, it turns out Lucia was the one that actually hired the mercenary because she wanted to ease Sarah's pain, and so that happened. And now that Sarah was devastated by knowing that her father died, she tasked Lucia, hire the assassin, capture Bane, bring him to me. So that's what she tasks, and so yeah, that goes to progress. Bane arrives to Sutric 4, notices that something's wrong with the mansion, and he gets ambushed by the assassin along with 20 other soldiers. Manages to kill a good chunk of them, but not enough. They manage to subdue Bane and capture him and transfer him to Dawn. Sana arrives in the end too late, and she basically finds that, oh shit, they got Bane out. I wanted to face Bane. Okay, well, let's go after him. And they go to Dawn to find him. And that's the end of part 2. So, yeah, plenty of stuff to tackle. So, yeah, what do you guys got to say on this?
Another sad reminder is Valentine Farfalla's name is actually referenced in here as the one who was killed by the Mad Sith Lord, which... No! He was not supposed to be killed by the Sith Lord. He was supposed to be killed in Rusan! Why are you making me reminded of this?
I mean, you want to blame it on...
Within the context of the scene, I mean, obviously, Farfalla at this point, he doesn't die on Rusan. That's been completely retconned.
Yeah, that's Rule of Two, and Dynasty of Evil is forced to pretty much acknowledge that. Just because, but yeah. So, indeed. Henson, since you were talking about how much you forgot about certain things, so what do you think of this second part of the book?
I mean, all of this is just set up for the finale. And it's like, really, the whole point of this book is to give us the confrontation we've been waiting for since the end of Path of Destruction, or well, then again, it wasn't really set up in Jedi vs. Sith, so I'll just say, with what we got in Path of Destruction, that, he'd find an apprentice, and that apprentice would eventually defeat him in battle and claim the title of Master.
I think this was actually said as far back as Phantom Menace novelization, because the Rule of Two was first established there.
No, I mean in terms of the story being told here.
Oh well, yeah, basically, yeah, Bane specifically Sana, yeah, I see what you mean.
But it's so we needed to justify separating them because we can't have them fight until the very fucking end of the book. And so we have to introduce all these other characters to continue to justify why they're separated, and then also justify why they come together or why they meet back up at the end. And like I said, I don't care about Sarah as a character or her plight. It's like, oh yeah, I know. I mean, I should care. I mean, the emotional trauma she went through as a child should be really interesting. But I just don't give a shit. Really thinking about it, one, change the trilogy. Have the Battle of Rusan stuff be I don't know, its own story. Like a comic or something. Or, just have not retcon Jedi vs. Sith. That's a fun idea. But have the second book be focused on Zana's training. Don't separate them. I mean, outside of the first part of that book of him having her find her own way makes sense. But it's the latter half of the book where it's okay, don't fucking separate them. Keep them together, show us her training, and you know what? Maybe subvert expectations here. Have them fight at the start of this book. Have Zana win. And then maybe have the rest of the book be focused on trying to find a new apprentice, but also you could have Sarah in here too, thinking that Bane is still alive, and then finding out that, oh, he's dead, and she just wasted her entire fucking life being consumed by what's essentially a ghost at this point.
Wouldn't that? But wait, if that's the case, then wouldn't that latter half make it more, I guess, unnecessary? Because we already saw the major confrontation between the two Sith. That's what we've been waiting for.
But the thing is, I mean, this is called the Bane trilogy, and yeah, he would be dead at the start of my hypothetical third book, but we would still be dealing with, we would have Sarah, who's so hyperfixated on Bane, his presence would still be felt. He'd still be important, but he just wouldn't be there physically. Now, whether or not this would have made for a better story, I can't say. This is a hypothetical, but at the very least, I personally think it would have been more interesting.
A similar thing, which did happen in Dark Plagueis, I think we're thinking about that book too much, is Dark Plagueis, the book literally begins with Palpatine already killing Plagueis, and then the book goes into a flashback beginning Plagueis' journey under, his master Tenebrous, up to the point where...
Even in that, like, the book opens, or at least, like, the actual story opens with Plagueis just killing his master.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's that, too. Well, I mean, granted, that book came out after, but it was written... The point is, it can be done.
I mean, that's kind of weird, because it was kind of planned for a long time. And
it went through production hell, let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. Another thing I have to mention is... So, Drew Carpenter managed to bring another obscure character, Seth Hart, into his story, which makes me question about a lot of his writing style. Is like Drew Carpenter is knowledgeable enough to find all these obscure sources to pull these characters out to use for his stories, yet his continuity or writing is very questionable. Like, for example, no one in the world, other than freaking nerds, knew who the hell Seth Hart was.
Certainly didn't the first time reading this book.
Yeah, well, that was the same case for me too. I also didn't know who Seth Hart was until I read this book. Yeah.
Or Cognis.
Well, yeah.
AKA the Huntress.
Yeah, there's her too. Yeah, that does make you wonder, like, why is it that Karpyshyn, like, yeah, he manages to find this little source and integrates him, but when it comes to already established stuff and, like, even little stuff, like, obviously the Battle of Ruzon and Bane of the Sith, like, that sort of stuff, he just trumps over it and just changes plenty of stuff that pretty much retcons it. Does he have double standards, or what's up with this?
I don't know.
Let's not forget putting greater importance on events and characters that really don't deserve that in universe. Cough, Revan, and pretty much the events of KOTOR.
A similar thing happened in the second book also, because Joe-Hoon Othon, anybody remember him? No one knew who Joe-Hoon was before Rule of Two. And in fact, back in the day, people actually thought Joe-Hoon was created by Carpyshyn. Consider him as an original character.
Well, that's something.
And this might be a minor complaint, but it kind of feels like a contradiction, but not. So, if you read the Legacy comics, I think it was like Darth Wirerock, the guy with W in his name, In this Legacy book, it acts like this Sith Lord come to this Darth Undeadu's planet after generations and generations later. And the comic acts like no one has disturbed this place in a long time. But if you read this book, Darth Bane comes and kills many of the followers of Darth Undeadu. And I've just been wondering while reading this comic, like, why you guys act like this was the first time someone invaded your planet? Sure, I get that, like, Darth Bane was like thousands years before it, but the description is kind of weird on how they act like there wasn't anybody who visited this planet since Darth Undeadu died or something.
Well, the only thing I can say is a lot of time happened since then, and they probably just thought, yeah, it's been a long time.
When did that particular issue come out?
I think it was like
A year before Dynasty of Evil.
so. Like the thing Corporation does a lot is when you read certain sources, there are not enough things stated, but there's like enough information for you to imply what has happened. So if there's some certain sources that doesn't explain the thing fully, Corporation tries to come up with its new meaning to basically ignore what was implied, because he could say, well, technically didn't say anything about it.
Well, as far as I know, because of the humongous time gap, I mean, who knows?
Again, George Lucas pulled that too.
Yeah, so it's a humongous time gap, so who knows on that? So it's not definitive saying, this has not been disturbed since that one time at whatever. It's just saying a long time, so it's vague. So there's that. Anyway, so anything else you guys want to mention on part 2?
Let's see. One thing I have to mention is like Sarah. I wouldn't even call her a character in the first Jedi versus Sith. So I don't know whether it's a good thing that Drew Corporation tried to expand her character, or is it one of
She was just a plot device.
Yeah, in the first book she was pretty much that. She was just a means to an end for another character.
I mean, the thing is, like I said, there is an interesting story to tell. Like with the PTSD she would probably experience after an event like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should be engaged. Not.
And another really interesting thing is like the book describes that Khalid told Sarah to leave the planet Ambria only 2 years before Bane arrived back to get himself healed from the Obelisk.
Well,
timing.
Yeah, that it is interesting timing.
Honestly, I think it would have been stronger if we really did never see her again. Like she really did just disappear from the galaxy.
Yeah, I think.
But no.
People said even he didn't know where she was in World 2, didn't?
Khalif?
Yeah.
It said that, which probably would have been for the better. Yeah. So there.
You gotta pull something out of Jedi versus Sith somehow.
It really is one of those things where, yeah, it's a story you can tell, but is it a story you should tell?
At least at this point and in this trilogy.
Well, yeah, that's the big thing too. Does it really need to be told here? Sarah's story would have worked so much better, at least not within my hypothetical Bane trilogy, but, have it just... Here's an idea. Write a short story with this character, Sarah. We're never directly told this is the healer's, or this is Caleb's daughter, but it's just heavily implied. Basically, yeah, this is the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And, that way, we can focus on her PTSD. We can focus on all the baggage she's been holding on to for the past 20 or so years. And it doesn't need to take away precious development time away from Bane and Zana's story.
I've been wondering while reading this book, is she what Bane's Darabit? No, not literally in the sense, but Darabit was someone from Zana's past that returned 10 years later after Rusan.
I mean, I thought Lucia was his equivalent.
Yeah, I would say Lucia.
I mean, she was the one who's like, oh, but there's still good in you.
Yeah,
it's like, why are we fucking doing this? We know there's not.
I mean, I'm just saying, is Sarah the equivalent of Darabit because, well, Lucia wasn't a thing when Jedi vs. Sith came out, so there's that.
I mean, there are certainly similarities, but really, it's Lucia.
Yeah.
Lucia. That character is the Darabit equivalent.
Yeah, that's more of a complaint for part 3, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you guys got anything to say on part 2, you want to go part
Sure,
3?
let's go on.
Okay, well,
Let's move on.
okay, so part 3. So this is the last. So basically, Bane is on Dawn, captured and being tortured by Sarah, with Lucia, and the assassin just watching it. And Sana is going after him with Set Harf in her ship, and shit goes wrong. And let's just say that Lucia decides to pretty much help Bane escape, while simultaneously trying to not get blamed for the betrayal. Basically, just putting one of the just giving Bane a small window of opportunity to escape. And Bane, of course, takes it, and he's pretty much just destroying everything stands in his way, doors, guards, whatever, trying to go after Sarah because of all the torturous stuff she did to him. So yeah, he doesn't have his lightsaber right now. By the way, the lightsaber is on the hands of the assassin, the Kochi assassin, the Huntress, which she also has Darth Bane's hologram. By the way, like she just has them stored in her coat. So yeah, and so Bane has no lightsaber here. He's just using the Force to pretty much just kill the shit out of anything. Sana arrives and orders Set Harf to stay on the ship. She goes looking for Bane and is trying to find him. After some trial and error, she managed to actually find him, and they do fight, but because Bane had a few still had some lingering drug effects from the torture that Sarah was putting on him, he tries his best to hold off Sana and find a way to escape her until he's in a better position, and also when he gets when he also gets his lightsaber back. And so yeah, he manages to fend her off and escape, but because the entire place was collapsing apart because, well, Sarah pretty much put the self-destruct sequence activated, and so yeah, 5-10 minutes, the entire place is blowing apart, and Sarah escapes, and so Bane and Sana also escapes. Now Set Harf, he decided to leave Sana's ship and just managed to find Darth Vendetto's hologram, which was stored in a safe inside the stone prison in Sarah's office. He manages to get it and gets another ship, gets into a quick confrontation with the Huntress, but he manages to convince her, yeah, let's just both go our separate ways. And yeah, gets another ship and just leaves with Vendetto's hologram. So that goes. The Huntress waits with a ship standing by to see Bane pretty much show up, and the Huntress is like, I got a gift for you, and she gives her the lightsaber and the holocron to Bane. He retrieves them, both get out of there, and Sana goes into her own ship and escapes too. So yeah, so when that happens, Sana's drifting there in autopilot in space, waiting for what to do. Bane and the Huntress go to Ambria because that's where Sarah went, to pretty much reflect on all of her mistakes and all the stuff that she did, which pretty much went against what Kalev and her husband would have wanted. So yeah, she pretty much at this point, she like has no real like emotional like outburst or anger or hate or anything, or even sadness. She's just like in a calm, serene sense of sorts, like pretty much at peace to some extent. And so, yeah, Bane and the Huntress arrive, and Sarah tries to discuss a little bit with Bane, but gets nowhere. And Bane orders the Huntress to eliminate Sarah, and yeah, they kill Sarah. They pretty much bury her body. Oh yeah, that also reminds me. Lucia was killed in the end of the part 2 of this book, and her corpse is buried in Umbria. She was buried by Sarah prior to Bane and the Huntress arriving. So now the Huntress pretty much buries Sarah, I guess, alongside Lucia. So yeah, both are dead. So yeah. Then Sana arrives because Bane sent a transmission to Sana so that they can pretty much fight to the death. And whoever wins the fight gets to train the next apprentice to pretty much propagate the Sith Order. That apprentice, of course, being the Huntress, which is later, she is now Darth Cognos. So yeah. So whoever one of those two is pretty much the one that the winner trains the apprentice, loser, well, dies, of course. So yeah. And so for anyone wondering how it actually went, because yeah, the end of the book tries to get a small twist. So basically, Sana wins, Bane dies. Full Spirit dies, yeah, that's the thing. So yeah. And that's how part 3 ends. Oh, and also Seth Harv goes into space and pretty much is looking at this holocron trying to get the secret to transfer essence. So yeah, that happens. So that's the end of part 3. So yeah, what do you guys got to say on this?
About the Bane versus Zana's ending, it isn't literally clear. Even Drew Carpenter stated that a certain fraction of Bane could have survived. So, what I assume what happened to this is Bane somehow survived, his personality somehow survived in certain ways, but Zana is mostly in control. That's what I assume. Or their personality merged together or something.
I mean, what I got out of it was, yeah, Bane was like defeated. He's gone, but you know, he still left somewhat of an imprint. Not enough to be like an intact personality, but like just an imprint, nothing more.
Like, I assume it was kind of similar to what Piccolo is from DBZ. Like, he got Neo and he got God, and their personalities kind of merge inside him.
Yeah, I didn't read it like that at all.
Yeah, I didn't too, so...
I mean, the way I saw it was that, yeah, leave it ambiguous, might do something with it later, but as it is, Bane is gone.
Drew Carpenter kind of described it as vague also. He didn't completely confirm whether Bane's conscience was completely destroyed, or maybe he was kind of imprinted on her, or some part of his consciousness did manage to survive. But he did confirm that Zana was mostly in control, that's for sure.
Yeah, so...
Certainly say having Bane, even a tiny bit, like still have some control would undermine, I think, everything.
But the hand twitching part is like, that was kind of unnecessary.
I think having any kind of ambiguity was completely fucking stupid. Like, there was no reason to leave the possibility of Bane still being there.
Yeah.
Especially since that would just raise too many fucking questions that don't even need to be asked.
Which that led into eventually Drew Carpenter having to say, make this long explanation because plenty of people were asking him, wait, Bane actually survived inside Sana? And yeah, he was like, okay, I didn't make a mistake.
Maybe, or maybe not. Even then, he didn't answer it properly.
Well, he does say at the end, so there it is, Sana won. Bane tried to possess her and failed, but it wasn't complete.
No, I know Zana won, but Drew Carpenter still didn't make it clear whether Bane was completely destroyed or did he live as a subconscious inside Zana or something. Like, he made it intentionally vague on purpose.
Yeah, it's indeed weird. But yeah, overall the story, Bane's dead, whatever's left to him, I mean, at this point, might as well just be a memory inside Sana's head, because I really don't think anything from Bane survived. Maybe because of the freaking soul trying to get into the body, like, the only thing left was just the hand twitching, and that's about it. I don't really think there's anything that says, oh yeah, Bane's taking control, or has some sort of subconscious. No, I think he's just dead for good.
Yeah, so we left with some kind of a unsatisfying conclusion, whether with unnecessary vagueness.
It was satisfactory until you get to, the uncertainty of which one lived.
And I don't know what was the point of having Seth Hart appear as an epilogue.
Yeah, I was about to say, this trilogy ends on a character who served absolutely no fucking purpose.
I guess this book was a prequel for Seth Hart's character, on how he managed to use essence transfer to make himself live for 1,000 years. Yes, 1,000 years.
Which makes you wonder, why bother? If you want to write a book about Seth Harv, then write a book about Seth Harv, but don't fucking write that inside another book.
And before I rant more about Seth Hart, I also have to mention that Drew Carpenter brought another character from a vague source, which Yes, it's later revealed as Darth Cognis.
Yeah, basically the Huntress is Darth Cognis.
So in this whole trilogy, there are barely any characters Drew Carpation actually came up with.
That is true. That is true indeed. So okay, so for those unaware, Darth Cognis was first mentioned in basically, or at least indirectly in some way mentioned in the Dark Forces Saga Part 5, but as actually identified as Darth Cognis was in a hyperspace article, Ever Never Dies: A Sith Dynasties, which is an online complement or component to Star Wars Insider 88. So
And
from 2006.
and, and that Dark Forces source makes it go all the way back to my point, because the Battle of Rusan and all this stuff was a prequel to Dark Forces 2. Not some kind of a weird ass sequel to the Knights of the Old Republic. That was the whole point. We went back to where we started.
Yeah, so that's something indeed. So yeah. So yeah, in regards to part 3, well, I'll say the best part was definitely the battle between Bane and Sana, because we did see them go at their full power and even unleashing tricks that one didn't know about the other one and vice versa. So definitely it was probably one of the best part of the book, the one we wanted to see for years. So
You know, at one point, Zana says that she'd been secretly learning fifth sorcery that not even Bane knew about. You want to know what would have been great?
mm-hmm.
If we actually saw any of that.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
We could have had literally any time spent on that. We could have, I don't know, talked about Sith alchemists or something.
Yeah, speaking of that, I kind of wanted the Rule of Two and Dynasty of Evil to always kind of, feature Darth Bane studying more about Sith sorcery himself, so he could eventually prepare against Zana when she turns against him.
Mm.
Like, I know
Zana's training really was completely skipped over.
I mean, I know Bane himself isn't talented when it comes to sorcery, but your apprentice might one day use it against you, so you might as well study them to prevent someone using them against you. Like, no? Okay.
You know, really, all we see Bane teach her is his annoying and repetitive as all hell philosophy, but do we ever actually see him, like, train her?
I mean, there was certain scenes about Bane telling Zana to use sorcery. And
Well, yeah, I mean, we see him lecture her, but do we see him, like, actually train her with anything?
lightsaber combat, yes, so Zana isn't physically talented enough, so Bane teaches her to use Sorisu.
But did we actually see any of that, though?
Yeah, probably.
Or were we just told that?
Just told.
I mean, there's a flashback, so take it the way you want.
Probably.
So the point is, we barely get any of it in terms of, like, the physical lightsaber stuff. And in terms of the Sith sorcery stuff,
Yeah.
we don't get anything, do we? We're just told that she knows how to do this and that she trained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this seems to be the case.
Time well spent, Carbon-Shin. Time well spent.
And that's kind of a weird thing, because Jedi vs. Sith never implies that she actually had talent for sorcery of anything. That's weird.
Well, I mean, I can see it as a skill she was able to just... Like, she was, what's the word? She had an affinity for it. But, again, we could have spent time on that. Like, again, going back to Plagueis, that actually showed training.
Yeah, in fact, it was like really interesting, because Plagueis explains, like, no matter what kind of weapon, whether it's a blaster or a lightsaber or something, you better be talented enough to use it.
For those wondering in the State of Star Wars audience, considering how much we're talking about Darth Plagueis, no, we're not gonna do a podcast on Darth Plagueis because guess what? We already did it. So just letting that out there for those curious.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the problem with it because Darth Plagueis is like in a whole different league compared to what this thing tries to do.
We had nothing but praise for that book, and we've
Say for one part.
pretty much just shot this trilogy to hell and back. Not only are there so many fucking problems in terms of continuity, but just the storytelling on display, I think, is incredibly flawed.
And speaking of flaws, I have to mention about Seth Hart now. Because Seth Hart is a frustrating inclusion to this trilogy.
It is, yeah.
And why is that? So, originally, Seth Hart appeared in one of those RPG books during the prequel trilogy era.
Yeah, so basically, Seth Hart's original appearance, it says the Star Wars role-playing game core rulebook, so that's his first mention. And then we got a full character bio in Ultimate Adversaries, another core rulebook from Wizards of the Coast.
The problem is, the book states that Seth Hart managed to learn essence transfer and managed to live on for 1,000 years. Now, the problem with that is this. Did Zana and Cognis gave up searching for Seth Hart? Did they just let this guy get away with knowing the fact that the Sith Order is still alive? And just let him roam around the galaxy, potentially being a danger? Like,
And also keep in mind, Cognis would be able to track him down regardless of essence transfer, so they clearly just did not give a shit about him.
Yeah, so... Okay.
Well, it makes me wonder, what exactly is his plan like?
I mean, Seth Hart's plan is basically look for artifacts and live he's like a Sith version of Indiana Jones. I mean, not Sith, dark side Indiana Jones, that's what it is, I guess.
Yeah, he's just somebody that just wants to look out for himself and just wants to live in the life surrounded by trinkets and shit, and he has no real big ambitions or anything. Just wants to live forever and just be as selfish as possible.
You know, this is the type of character who you would set up and then actually do something with. Like a character who's lived for 1,000 years, who's collecting dark side artifacts. Like, you don't just set that up and then not do anything with it.
Except that's what happened.
The mere fact that Cognis and Zana just left this guy alive is a huge, huge problem. I guess Drew Karpyshyn didn't consider this, or did he think some other writer might have fixed this problem he created?
No idea.
I guess his thought process was, well, not my problem.
He probably just saw what Ultimate Adversary said. He just basically was like, yeah, I'll bring this character here, and I'll just have him pretty much get Undead's holocron, so I can basically confirm how he basically just managed to cheat death and pretty much managed to live for the many centuries later on. So
yeah, I think that's really what it was. Just Karpyshyn wanted to tell the story of how he was able to live that long and didn't think beyond that.
And that's another problem, because if you read the Republic comics in the Clone Wars multimedia project, you clearly see Count Dooku have the holocron of Darth Undeadu. Like, how did Count Dooku get Darth Undeadu's holocron? Did just Seth Hart give it away?
Well, there is that question. If we do see in the comic, apparently the holocron is in what? Korriban? Sometime in the 900 years since this book all the way to Republic issue 63. Undead's holocron pretty much is no longer in Seth Hart's grasp. So basically, yeah, the holocron somehow ended in Korriban. Now, because of the huge time gap, I mean, there's obviously million things that could have happened, but of course, there is that question, and we didn't get the answer for it, so yeah, that definitely went unanswered. Now, as for the other big question regarding if Seth Hart lived for many years, what was the final fate of him? Unknown at that. Unknown again. There we got No explanation. How we don't even know the exact time he died. You don't know.
I mean, is he still alive during Star Wars Legacy Volume 2?
No idea on that. Now, granted, Sethar's final fate is not entirely Carpishin's fault. Carpishin's fault is just basically making Son and Cognos pretty much ignore him. So that's pretty much the real fault. So the Sethar's final fate is more of the ultimate adversary's bio, not just clear of his final fate. So,
but Sethar getting the holocron,
well, that
or
is
getting
also
Undead's holocron involved in this story is Drew Carpishin's fault.
Yeah, that
because
is
we have to wonder why this holocron ended up in Korriban and in the hands of Dooku.
Yeah, that is.
Again.
Yeah, that is definitely Carpishin's fault. The misplacement of the holocron, and basically Sana and Cognos not giving a shit about looking for Sethar. So yeah, that's basically the biggest problem in regards to Sethar that Carpishin brought in.
Why do we have to think about that?
I mean, we all three of us know Carpishin's mindset. He prefers to tell a good story over a good continuity. You know that excuse that he's
not even good. I hate doing headcanon stuff to understand what the hell's going on.
Oh god.
Well, I would say, are we in the minority? Like, the majority of fans like the trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Well, we know why. Because most of them don't care about Jedi vs. Sith or Bane of the Sith. That's why.
So yeah, that's what I mean. Most people would call this trilogy good. So we are in the minority, which is... It's funny to say this because my initial reviews pointed to me liking the trilogy overall despite its flaws, but rereading them for these podcasts has just like completely shifted my opinions. I do not like this trilogy. I don't know if I'd go as far as say I hate it, but I no longer enjoy it.
I mean, here's the thing about that. Compare, it gets better the more the trilogy goes on. So, Rule of Two is a huge, huge improvement over Path of Destruction on the mere fact that it doesn't contradict a lot of stuff. And Dynasty of Evil is an improvement over Rule of Two that it doesn't have continuity problems at all.
At least not to the degree of the last two books.
At least what we can find from it, right?
Yeah, at least when it comes to the same scale of the last two books. So there is that.
But that's not saying much.
It isn't saying much, yeah.
The thing is, I would say in terms of just being an engaging story, I think Path of Destruction is the strongest. Like, I was more engaged with that book than I was in books 2 and 3. Like, yeah, I recognize the continuity fuck-ups happening less and less as a positive, though, the fact that they were happening in the first place. Directly, by Carpishin's own admission. Problem. But it's like, by the time we get to this book, this isn't an engaging story, at least to me. I don't care. While in Path of Destruction, yeah, the contradictions are annoying, but I'm still engaged in what is happening, unlike now, where I just want my pain to end.
Oh, there's another problem. This isn't a problem per se, but it's a problem because since we established that Cognos is the apprentice of Zana, which means we also have to wonder how their final encounter went. Because we know that Cognos later gets an apprentice Darth Millennial. So, like, Drew Carpishin has made us consider unnecessary 4 questions. Number 1 question being, how much of Bane's essence is alive in Zana? It's number 1 question. Number 2, why did Cognos and Zana ignore Sethar and let him run around the galaxy for 1,000 years. And number 3 is, how did this holocron ended up in Korriban and later in Count Dooku? And number 4 is, why and how did Zana die? Questions that we didn't need to think about, but Drew Carpishin made us think.
Here's a question. Do we know if there are any plans of doing stuff after this book?
I don't think so.
As in, basically, or did Lucasfilm thought to maybe continue the story of Sana or even Cognos?
Yeah.
I don't remember, because as far as we know, the biggest plan going on at the time was the Clone Wars, TCW. So that seemed to be the biggest focus at the time. I don't really know if there was anything. Oh, and also tackling post Return the Jedi era. Basically, at that time, they were focused on Fate of the Jedi. So I think they were busy with Fate of the Jedi and definitely TCW. That seemed to be the biggest focus.
Especially with Cognos, he didn't need to be in the story. It could have been some original character Drew Carpation created. So, in the end, it doesn't matter whether Cognos killed Zana. I mean, this hypothetical OC killed Zana or Zana killed OC, because the Rule of Two would end on. I mean, continue on until Palpatine and Vader. But since Carpation already put a established character in the trilogy, we have to think about how their final confrontation ended up.
There is that, yeah. As far as I know, there doesn't seem to be any source saying that Cognos was, the apprentice of the master that used to be the apprentice of Darth Bane. So yeah, maybe it could have been someone original. Who knows? Though I don't know. I mean, I don't think Cognos being this story is necessarily bad. I think that's more in the case for, say, Sarah, Lucia, and definitely Seth Harf. I think those three definitely didn't need to be here at all. Cognos, there at least was potential to showcase how she could eventually, become the Sith, and we did see that. So I don't have much of an issue with Cognos being in this book. It's the other characters that were put here that I definitely have more of an issue with. So yeah, because those definitely annoy more. So yeah.
Yeah. So unnecessary questions created by Drew Carpation is the biggest problem of this book.
Yeah, indeed, it is. It is definitely a problem. Yeah. So there is that. So yeah.
On a separate note, I will say regarding Sarah, again, as I said at the start of the video, I forgot about most of the shit that happened in this book. So when she goes back to Ambria, buries Lucia, whatever, I honestly thought that was like it for her. And then of course Bane comes back and then she gets killed by Cognos, and on the one hand, thematically speaking, it was good enough, I guess. But it's like I feel like this is one of those situations where I would rather not have the character die, because in my opinion, it is far more interesting to have this character just live. After all the shit she's done, the regrets she will have for the rest of her life. But nope, gotta kill her, because can't have anyone from Jedi vs. Sith fucking survive.
Well, except one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except just one. So there is that. Indeed. Anything else to mention on part 3, or I guess the book as a whole, guys? So before we get to the EU connections?
Let's just do EU connections. That will just finish up this book, and then we can do thoughts on it.
Okay, well, in that case, now we get into EU connections. Okay, so
now this is gonna be really tiring, but I regret to tell the audience that Jedi vs. Sith is also a primary source, because for obvious reasons.
Yeah, obviously. Obviously, yeah, Jedi vs. Sith, and yeah. The 2 previous books in the Darth Bane trilogy are obvious, so we don't need to list them.
Actually, no, there is no single reference to Bane of the Sith. That's weird.
Not that.
Well, I mean, really, you don't even need Jedi vs. Sith here, because all the shit we get of Sarah is the same in both versions.
Yeah, so.
And that removes a lot of sources for this book, if you think about it, because saying that Path of Destruction and Rule of Two is a reference is a reach.
Yeah,
I
obviously.
mean, it is a sequel, so I wouldn't. Those aren't references.
Yeah,
But
we're not
then
really
like,
counting them.
characters like Lucia is exclusive to Path of Destruction, so there's
But
that.
it's part of the same trilogy, so we're not counting that as its own reference. No, what we really should be counting is, for example, Sutric 4, the planet that Bane and Sana ended up being, that actually first showed up in basically one of the Star Wars X-Wing Rogue Squadron comics, specifically Mandatory Retirement. So,
And I think it was Star Wars Encyclopedia, the Black 2008 edition.
mm,
And I think that was the first source to state that Cognus was a Tachi female.
Nikachi female. Um, it could maybe.
So that's a reference, I guess.
Maybe, but obviously Cognus, when it comes to Cognus, we have to mention Evil Never Dies as if Dynasties. That was when it was first identified as Cognus, though her first mention was Dark Forces Saga Part 5. So there is that. And now as for other references, well, do you guys got any before I say mine?
Let's see. Star Wars Legacy, which shows Star Undeadu's planet.
Yeah,
And I
correct.
guess Republic, what issue was that?
Well, in regards to the hologram of Undeadu, that's issue 63.
Yeah, Republic 63.
Yeah.
So that's my reference.
Yeah, which also has the first appearance of Undead, Republic issue 63, so there's that. So, yeah, Prakith. Though Prakith actually first appeared in Shield of Lies. Yeah, the second book of the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy. So, there's that little bit of info.
But specifically about Undeadu and its followers was Legacy.
Yeah, it is Legacy. So Legacy 27 also is included here. Seth Harful, we already mentioned, he basically first shows up in the Star Wars role-playing game core rulebook. That's when he was first ever mentioned in the Star Wars universe. So there is that. And Dawn, the planet, well, its first appearance here, but it's also shown up in SWOTOR and the Essential Reader's Companion. So there is that, and specific moments of this book, like for example the second duel on Ambria, basically Bane against Sana, mentioned in Essential Reader's Companion, first picture and mentioned. So.
I wouldn't say Essential Reader's Companion because that basically lists the books. So, and it's not even written in an in-universe perspective, so I don't know if that's considered a reference.
I mean, if new information was put in there, it would be valid.
There's that, yeah. Okay, so, yeah, already mentioned Seth Harf. Sarah, Khalif's daughter, we obviously know she first appeared in Jedi vs. Sith. She also mentioned the Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia and the Essential Reader's Companion, so I guess in there it mentions, her final fate. Singles with Lucia. So there's that. Cognus, what we already mentioned. There's one specific organization that is mentioned in this book that was also mentioned in Rule of Two, Cygnus Spaceworks, and they actually first appear in Star Wars X-Wing, so there's that for you. And some expensive dark colored wood from Alderaan called Kryn wood was also first. It actually first appeared in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, but here's where it was first identified. So there's that very hidden reference. And then there's a very extremely soft and smooth silk that was produced on Demacia during the rule of Galactic Republic, the Dramasian Shimmer silk. That actually it was first mentioned in The Approaching Storm. Yeah, one of your favorites, though, one. But its
my
first appearance is
favorite
here.
With my favorite author, Alan Dean Foster.
Yeah. So
Just kidding, I hate that book.
yeah, so apparently Dynasty of Evil decided to have one reference from that book, so there's that. And the Dark Side Tendrils, the ones that Sana uses against Bane, those actually first appeared in Dark Apprentice. Yeah, from the Jedi Academy trilogy, the second book. So there is that. And, well... And yeah, there's obviously one reference, or plenty of them, for Tales of the Jedi, Master Thorn, from the Tales of the Jedi, the Nomi Sunrider arc, where she was trained by Master Thorn. Yeah, he's referenced here. So that, I guess we got one Tales of the Jedi reference right there and there. And so there is that. We already mentioned Belia Darso was mentioned here. So, and we already mentioned that she has appeared in other sources. We mentioned the previous podcast. So yeah, that seems to be the biggest sources that I found. Do you guys got any other ones?
No.
No? Okay. Well, in that case, and I guess now we go into the conclusion for this podcast, and I guess our conclusion in the Darth Bane trilogy. So I guess now we can talk in detail of the whole trilogy. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Now, this trilogy, the first time I read it, I quite enjoyed, but that was when I was a normie. After I graduated from being a normie, I started to see a lot of problems. The first book is an absolute abomination of continuity. The second book is like slight improvement, but thematically it's like really terrible. And the third book is like, I didn't remember what this book was about, other than Seth Hardcockness in the final encounter between Darth Bane and Zana. So the third book is a forgettable mess. So that's what I'm gonna describe these books. Yes.
Well, there's that. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Hanson.
As the continuity fuck-ups lessened, I found myself feeling less and less engaged. The first book I still think is the strongest, and by the time we get to this, you people already know. I've said it so many times throughout this fucking video. I do not see myself rereading these books for fun. I may reread Path of Destruction for fun. Like I said, I do find myself engaged in that book. But in terms of like a Plagueis or a Death Star, those two books I can just like reread all the fucking time and never grow bored. But here though, there's nothing for me here. They exist for better and for worse. And the fact that they have the mostly positive reputation they do is annoying, but whatever.
Well, that's something. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as for me, well, I say, yeah. First book, I enjoyed the first half. Second half is where it got problematic. Second book, well, it's kind of the inverse, which is surprising. So basically, first half, not fan of. Second half was better, but it had a few issues. And the third book, surprisingly, I did remember a good chunk of what happened, but there were things that I did forget. And yeah, it still has plenty of issues, especially in regards to the writing, in regards to what to really do with the last book of the Darth Bane trilogy. So yeah, this definitely, it does make you wonder why Drew Karpyshyn didn't want to focus on just Bane and Sana, maybe just one more character, and that's about it. So yeah, it's got writing issues. Is it better than the other two? Well, at least from the continuity standpoint, and it's better. But I don't know if writing quality is better. I mean, maybe because at least it's not a retelling of previous sources. Who knows? Depends on you. So yeah, this trilogy is definitely not on the better ones. This is no. This is no Tron trilogy. Was at least that was consistent with his writing, and or any other greater trilogy. This definitely is on the more hit and miss. Yeah, it's considered one of the best, but that's mostly because people don't really know about Jedi vs. Sith or Bane of the Sith. So that's pretty much the main reasons why. So yeah, that is the main things, and it does make me wonder, since we don't really like too much of Darth Bane trilogy, then what is Drew Karpyshyn's best book?
Because Star Wars fandom is full of normies.
No. I'm legit asking, like, which is Karpyshyn's best book?
No. The correct question you've been wondering is not which is his best book. which is his best Star Wars contribution.
Oh.
In that case, the answer will be the Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything.
And even then, what exactly did he contribute to KOTOR?
He was the main writer. That's it.
Well, I know. I mean specifically. Like, what were his ideas that were actually utilized in that
I
game?
guess people attribute the creation of Revan to him, so...
Well, that is one question we'll have to answer when we, at one point, get into tackling that game. So, yeah. When we'll tackle it? Well, sometime later on. So, yeah.
You know, honestly, as someone who hasn't... I mean, I started playing KOTOR going up until Tatooine. And, yeah, he was the head writer. Obviously, there being a bunch of other people in the writing process for that game, so I can't really judge that game based on him. But in terms of the Bane trilogy, he's certainly a competent enough writer, but there are Star Wars authors that are just infinitely better.
This may sound controversial, but I like and think the Revan novel is a way better written, both thematically and continuity-wise, than the Darth Bane trilogy combined.
Well, if we're talking the trilogy combined, then I guess that would be the case. Individual books is a different story, so there's that. Yeah, Carpachin's best. Probably KOTOR, so that probably is. I haven't read The Old Republic Annihilation, so that's the only one book that from Carpachin that I haven't read yet. So who knows on that one? So yeah, but that seems to be it. KOTOR is his best. So yeah. Anyway, so that is the end for this podcast, and what will be the next podcast? Well, we'll have to wait and see. So until then, we'll see you guys on the next State of Star Wars video. Bye bye.
Live long and prosper.